When my sister secretly sold Dad's worthless farm for $80,000, she didn't know the land was sitting on a $34 million lithium deposit. My sister called me at 6:12 on a Thursday morning. Most people know something is wrong when their phone rings that early, but Ashley never called because something was wrong. Ashley called when she thought she had won. I answered on the third ring and immediately heard her laughing. Not nervous laughter, victorious laughter. The kind of laughter someone uses when they believe they're smarter than everyone else. "Well," she said, "it's finally done." I sat up in bed. "What is?" "Dad's farm." I looked toward the window. Outside, the sun was barely rising over the hills. For a second, I thought I had misunderstood her. "What about it?" "I sold it." She sounded proud, almost excited, like she expected applause. "You sold what?" "Dad's farm, the whole property, $80,000 cash." Then she laughed again. "You should be thanking me." I didn't say anything, not because I was shocked that she sold it, but because 3 weeks earlier, representatives from a mining company had sat across from me in a conference room and offered $34 million for the mineral rights beneath that exact land. $34 million. And Ashley knew nothing about it. Even more interesting, Ashley had absolutely no legal authority to sell the property. None. Not a single document gave her ownership. Not a single court record supported her claim. The farm belonged to me. It had belonged to me for 6 years. Legally, completely, exclusively. Yet somehow my sister had convinced someone to buy it. I swung my legs off the bed. "Ashley? What? Who exactly did you sell it to?" There was a brief pause. The first tiny crack in her confidence. "Why?" "Just curious." She named a development company based 2 counties away. My stomach tightened. I recognized the name immediately. They weren't farmers. They weren't ranchers. They specialized in commercial land acquisitions, which meant they probably knew something valuable existed beneath the property. Maybe not the full truth, but enough to take a chance. Ashley kept talking. "I handled everything myself." Of course she did. That was Ashley. She never asked permission. She assumed permission. Her entire life had been built on the belief that rules were for other people. Then she delivered the sentence that changed everything. "I signed the paperwork yesterday." Signed the paperwork yesterday. I glanced at the clock. 6:14 a.m. The title company would already be processing documents. Lawyers would already be reviewing filings. Money would already be moving. And Ashley had no idea what she'd just stepped into. Because there was one more thing she didn't know. For nearly 4 months, state investigators had been quietly reviewing transactions connected to her real estate brokerage. Nothing public, nothing announced. But people had started asking questions. Questions about signatures. Questions about ownership transfers. Questions about paperwork that seemed a little too convenient. I knew because one of the attorneys involved in my lithium negotiations had mentioned it. At the time, I ignored it. It wasn't my business. Now it was. Ashley was still talking, still celebrating, still convinced she had saved the family from a burden. Finally, she said, "You're welcome." Then she hung up. I sat in silence. The room felt strangely calm. No anger, no panic, just certainty. Because for the first time in her life, Ashley had made a mistake nobody could fix for her. And by the end of the week, the entire family would learn the truth about Dad's worthless farm. My name is Noah Carter. I'm 33 years old, and for most of my life, my family treated me like the backup child. Not the favorite, not the success story, the backup, the one people politely tolerated. Ashley was 3 years older than me. Growing up, she excelled at everything people could see. Honor roll, student government, cheerleading, scholarships, awards. If there was a stage, Ashley found a way onto it. Meanwhile, I preferred staying in the background. I liked working with my hands. I liked solving problems quietly. I liked building things. Unfortunately, none of those qualities impressed my family, especially our mother. Mom loved appearances, not in a cruel way, at least not intentionally. She simply believed success should look successful. Nice clothes, expensive cars, professional titles, big houses. Ashley fit that image perfectly. I didn't. After high school, Ashley earned a business degree. I spent 2 years studying agricultural engineering before leaving college to work. That decision became family legend. Every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every birthday gathering, someone would eventually mention how much potential I had wasted. Usually Mom, sometimes Ashley, occasionally both. At first I argued, then I explained. Eventually, I stopped caring because the truth was simple. They were judging a life they didn't understand. And I had no interest in convincing them otherwise. Dad understood. He always did. My father wasn't a man who cared much about appearances. He cared about results. When I was 16, he taught me something I never forgot. We were repairing fencing on the farm. It was August, 98 degrees, sweat soaked through our shirts. Dad pointed toward a field. "What do you see?" "Corn." He shook his head. "What else?" I looked again. "Dirt." Again he shook his head. Then he smiled. "Opportunity." I remember rolling my eyes. He laughed. "Noah, most people only see what's on the surface. The people who build wealth learn to see what's underneath." At 16, I thought he was talking about farming. Years later, I realized he was talking about everything. Dad died when I was 27. A heart attack, fast, unexpected. The kind of loss that splits a family into before and after. The funeral was packed. Hundreds of people attended. Farmers, business owners, neighbors, old friends, people I had never met. For 2 days, everyone talked about what a good man he had been. Then came the reading of the will, and everything changed. Ashley expected Dad's assets to be divided equally. So did Mom. So did everyone else. Instead, Dad left most financial accounts to Mom. Several investment properties were split among relatives. And the farm came entirely to me. 100% ownership. Ashley was furious. Mom was confused. I was shocked. Afterward, Ashley cornered me in the parking lot outside the attorney's office. Why would he do that? I honestly didn't know. At least, not then. A week later, I found the answer. Dad left a handwritten letter. Just 1 page. Folded neatly inside an envelope. My name written across the front. I still have it. The paper is worn now. The corners are bent, but I remember every word. One sentence especially. "Noah, you're the only person who ever loved the land more than what it could be sold for." That sentence changed my life because it forced me to ask a question. What if Dad knew something nobody else knew? Over the next 6 years, I spent thousands of hours researching land values, water rights, mineral rights, agricultural leases, energy exploration, property development. I learned things most people never think about. And slowly, I began acquiring additional rights connected to neighboring properties. Not large amounts, just pieces, fragments, opportunities others ignored. Meanwhile, Ashley's career exploded. She became one of the top real estate brokers in the region. Magazine features, business awards, local television interviews. The family couldn't stop talking about her. Every gathering became another Ashley celebration. I learned to smile, congratulate her, stay quiet, then go home. What nobody knew was that the farm boy they pitied had quietly built something worth more than all their assumptions combined. And 3 years before Ashley's phone call, I ordered a geological survey. A decision that would eventually change everything. But I didn't tell anyone, not even Dad's closest friends, because some opportunities grow best in silence, and beneath our family's forgotten farm, something extraordinary was waiting. Something worth far more than anyone imagined, including Ashley. 3 days after Ashley's phone call, our family gathered for Sunday dinner. The timing wasn't accidental. Ashley loved audiences, and family dinners provided the perfect stage. By the time I arrived, everyone was already seated. Mom, Uncle Rick, Aunt Denise, 2 cousins, Ashley, her husband Brandon. The atmosphere felt oddly celebratory, like everyone knew a secret. Everyone except me. Ashley stood when we entered, holding a wine glass, smiling. There it was again, that confidence, that certainty, the expression of someone who believes they're about to be admired. "Noah," she announced loudly. Perfect timing. I took my seat. "What's going on?" Ashley exchanged looks with Mom. Then she smiled even wider. "Good news." I already knew the news. I wanted to hear her to November. She raised her glass. After years of dealing with Dad's old property, I finally solved the problem. Applause erupted around the table. Actual applause. My uncle even laughed. Ashley continued. "I found a buyer and sold the farm." More applause. Mom wiped away tears. I can finally stop worrying about that place. I looked around the room. Nobody asked whether the owner agreed. Nobody asked whether the transaction was legal. Nobody asked how Ashley obtained authority. They simply assumed she knew best, just like always. Then Ashley pulled an envelope from her purse. Slowly, dramatically, like a game show host revealing a prize. Inside was a check. She slid it across the table. $80,000. Everyone stared. Ashley looked directly at me. You would have never figured out how to do this. The room nodded. Agreement everywhere. I glanced at the check, then back at Ashley, and for the first time all evening, I spoke, calmly, quietly. How exactly did you sell land you don't own? The room instantly fell silent. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Ashley laughed, but this time, the laughter sounded different, and for the first time all week, I saw uncertainty enter her eyes. Ashley crossed her arms. Excuse me. I looked around the table. Nobody was eating anymore. Nobody was smiling. The atmosphere had changed completely. I repeated myself. How exactly did you sell property you don't legally own? Ashley rolled her eyes. Oh, please. She turned toward the family. See? This is what I'm talking about. Nobody laughed. She continued anyway. Dad left the farm to Noah, but everyone knows it was supposed to belong to the family. I nodded. That's not what I asked. Ashley leaned forward. I handled the paperwork. What paperwork? The necessary paperwork. That answer told me everything. People who have authority explain details. People who don't hide behind vague words. Mom finally spoke. Ashley, what does Noah mean? Ashley looked irritated, like she couldn't believe anyone was questioning her. The farm was falling apart. It wasn't. It wasn't generating income. It was. She stared at me. I stared back. For years, Ashley had won arguments through confidence alone. Most people confuse confidence with competence. I never did. Finally, I reached into my jacket pocket. I pulled out a folded document, a certified copy of Dad's will, the page identifying ownership. I placed it on the table. Nobody touched it. Nobody needed to. The attorney's seal was clearly visible. The language was simple. The property belonged entirely to me, not partially, not jointly, entirely. Mom read it twice, then 3 times. Her face slowly changed. Confusion, then concern, then disbelief. Ashley laughed again, but now the sound felt forced. So what? So what? I asked. You're being dramatic. No. I folded my hands. You sold property you don't own. For the first time, Ashley stopped talking. The silence lasted several seconds. Then Brandon cleared his throat. Ashley? She ignored him. Instead, she looked directly at me. What are you trying to do? The question surprised me, because I wasn't trying to do anything. I wasn't attacking her. I wasn't humiliating her. I was simply describing reality. Before I could answer, my phone vibrated. A text message. From David Mercer, my attorney. 3 words. Call me immediately. Not later, not tomorrow, immediately. I stood. I need to take this. Ashley smirked. Running away already? I didn't respond. I walked outside. The moment I answered, David spoke. Noah. His voice sounded serious. What happened? The buyer's attorneys contacted us. My stomach tightened. What did they find? A lot. I walked toward the edge of the yard. Beyond the trees, I could see distant farmland stretching toward the horizon. The same land everyone called worthless. David continued. The title company discovered inconsistencies. What kind? Ownership records. I closed my eyes. And? They've frozen the transaction. The wind moved through the trees. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then David delivered the next piece. The buyer knows something valuable exists beneath the property. That got my attention. How much do they know? Not everything. I exhaled slowly. How close are they? David paused, then answered carefully. Close enough. When the call ended, I remained outside for several minutes, thinking, calculating, because one thing had become very clear. Ashley hadn't acted alone. Someone had encouraged this deal. Someone had convinced her there was money to be made, and whoever that person was, they knew more about the farm than Ashley did. When I walked back inside, everyone looked at me, waiting. Ashley especially. She wanted reassurance. She wanted confirmation that this wasn't serious. Instead, I sat down and asked a simple question. Who approached you about buying the farm? Ashley frowned. What? The buyer. Her eyes shifted, just slightly. But I noticed, and that tiny reaction told me something important. There was a part of this story she hadn't told anyone. Not yet. The room remained silent. Ashley looked uncomfortable for the first time all evening. Why does that matter? It matters because nobody offers cash for land they think is worthless. Ashley hesitated, then answered. A consultant contacted me. What consultant? I don't remember his name. That was a lie. Everybody knew it, including her. I stood and connected my phone to the television in Mom's living room. Ashley immediately looked nervous. What are you doing? Showing everyone something. I opened a folder. Hundreds of documents appeared on the screen. Maps, reports, geological surveys, legal agreements, research files. The family stared. Mom blinked. What's all that? I clicked one file. A color-coded geological survey filled the screen. Several red markers sat directly beneath Dad's farm. Uncle Rick squinted. What am I looking at? I took a breath, then said the words that changed everything. The farm sits on one of the largest lithium deposits discovered in this part of the state. Nobody reacted, at least not immediately, because most of them didn't understand what that meant. So I continued. Lithium is used in batteries. Now they understood. Phones, electric vehicles, energy storage systems, everything. Mom slowly sat down. Ashley stared at the screen. I zoomed into the report, then highlighted the valuation estimate, $34 million. The number filled the television. Nobody spoke. The room felt frozen. Mom looked from the screen to me, then back again. Finally, she whispered, 34 million? I nodded. Ashley laughed, but now the laugh sounded desperate. No. I said nothing. No. Again, silence. This is fake. It isn't. You're lying. I'm not. Ashley stood up. You expect everyone to believe this? I opened another document, then another, then another. Letters of intent, exploration studies, mineral assessments, engineering reviews. Every document came from different firms, different experts, different dates. The evidence was overwhelming. Brandon looked pale. Mom looked like she might cry. My uncle looked physically ill, because suddenly the story changed. This wasn't about $80,000 anymore. This was about $34 million, and Ashley had tried to sell it. Ashley stared at the screen. Her face had lost all color. Then she whispered, No. For the first time in years, I felt sorry for her because she finally understood the scale of her mistake. Unfortunately, the worst part hadn't happened yet. My phone rang again. David Mercer. I answered and placed him on speaker. The entire room listened. David didn't waste time. Noah, we have a problem. Ashley immediately stepped forward. What problem? David continued. The title company completed its review. Nobody breathed. Then he said, They found forged authorization documents. The room exploded. Mom gasped. Brandon swore under his breath. Ashley froze. David wasn't finished. They also found altered inheritance records. My heart sank because now we had crossed a line. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was fraud. And David had one more piece of news. The state investigators want interviews. Silence. They're opening a formal investigation. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Ashley looked like she couldn't process what she was hearing because reality had finally arrived. And reality didn't care about confidence or popularity or family reputation. Reality only cared about facts, and the facts were devastating. The woman who had spent her entire life believing she could control every situation had just lost control of the biggest one. And by Monday morning, the consequences would begin. Monday morning started with 12 missed calls. 6 belonged to Ashley. 3 belonged to Mom. The others came from relatives who hadn't spoken to me in months. I ignored every one of them. Not because I was angry, because there was nothing left to discuss. The situation had moved beyond family conversations. Attorneys were involved. Investigators were involved. The title company was involved. Facts were involved. And facts tend to ruin stories people tell themselves. At 9 a.m., I met David Mercer in his office. He placed a thick file on the conference table. The stack was nearly 4 inches tall. That's everything? I asked. David shook his head. No. He pointed toward another stack sitting nearby. That's everything. I stared at it. The buyer's legal team had moved fast. Very fast. Faster than Ashley realized, because companies don't spend millions of dollars without doing their homework. The moment inconsistencies appeared, they started digging. And once professionals start digging, they usually find more than expected. David opened the first folder. Inside were copies of signatures. Some belonged to me. At least they were supposed to. The problem was simple. I never signed them. Not one. The signatures looked convincing from a distance, but up close, the differences were obvious. Wrong slant, wrong spacing, wrong pressure points, tiny details most people never notice, but forensic document examiners notice everything. I felt my stomach tighten, not because I was scared, because somebody had invested real effort into creating those documents. This wasn't a rushed decision. This wasn't an impulsive mistake. Someone planned it. David slid another file across the table. Look at this. I opened it. Inside were ownership records, altered ownership records, names moved, dates changed, information adjusted, just enough to create confusion, not enough to survive scrutiny. Whoever prepared them understood real estate, but they underestimated the investigation process. David leaned back. The buyer's attorneys believe multiple people were involved. I looked up. You agree? He nodded. Nobody produces this volume of paperwork alone. I thought about Ashley, her confidence, her certainty, her arrogance. Then I thought about the consultant she refused to identify, the person who approached her, the person who probably convinced her this was easy money. David continued. State investigators are focusing on the source of the documents. What happens now? He paused. Then answered carefully, now everyone starts protecting themselves. That sentence stayed with me, because he was right. When success disappears, loyalty usually disappears with it, and Ashley's success was already vanishing. By Tuesday afternoon, rumors had spread through the local real estate community. By Wednesday, they weren't rumors anymore. People were talking openly. Questions were circulating. Clients were calling. Partners were asking for explanations. Nobody likes uncertainty, especially when money is involved. Thursday morning, Ashley finally reached me. I answered because I knew she wouldn't stop calling. Her voice sounded completely different. Not confident, not victorious, scared. Noah. I remained silent. Can we talk? We're talking. Another pause. Then she asked the question she'd been avoiding all week. How long have you known? About what? The lithium. I looked out the window of my office. Rain tapped softly against the glass. 3 years. Silence. Then, 3 years? Yes. You never told anyone? No. Why? Because nobody asked. Because nobody cared. Because everyone assumed I was stupid. But I didn't say those things. Instead, I said, some opportunities grow better in silence. Ashley started crying. Not dramatically, not loudly, quietly. The way people cry when their entire understanding of reality starts collapsing. I didn't know. I know. I thought, her voice broke. I thought I was helping. For the first time, I believed she was telling part of the truth. Part of it, not all of it. Ashley liked control. She liked being the fixer, the problem solver, the successful sibling. Selling the farm allowed her to play that role again. The fact that she might profit from it probably didn't hurt. But deep down, I think she genuinely believed she was smarter than everyone else, including me, especially me. And that belief had finally become expensive. Very expensive. By Friday, the investigation expanded, and the public fallout began. The first news article appeared Friday afternoon. A small local publication, nothing major, just a short story about a disputed land transaction involving forged documents. No names, no details, but everyone knew. Small towns are like that. Information travels faster than facts. By evening, Ashley's name was everywhere. Text messages, Facebook groups, industry forums, private conversations. People love success stories, but they love collapses even more, especially when the successful person spent years reminding everyone how successful they were. The following Monday, Ashley's brokerage announced an internal review. 2 days later, they suspended her license pending investigation. That headline made regional news. Suddenly, reporters started calling. Not me. Ashley, her brokerage, the attorneys, anyone connected to the story, and the more attention it received, the worse things became. Clients began canceling contracts, investors withdrew partnerships, potential buyers walked away, people stopped returning calls. For years, Ashley's network seemed enormous. Now it was disappearing, one person at a time. That's the thing about status. People think status creates loyalty. Usually it creates convenience. And convenience leaves the moment conditions change. 3 weeks after the Sunday dinner confrontation, Mom visited my house. She looked exhausted, older, smaller somehow. We sat on the porch overlooking the fields. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Finally, she sighed. I was wrong. The words surprised me. Mom rarely admitted mistakes, not because she was stubborn, because she hated feeling vulnerable. I waited. She stared toward the farm. I spent years worrying about Ashley. I nodded. I know. I spent years defending her. I know. She looked at me, and for the first time in my life, I saw genuine regret. Not guilt, regret. The difference matters. Guilt feels bad. Regret understands why. Mom's eyes filled with tears. You never complained. No. You never fought back. No. Why? I smiled slightly, because the answer was simple. Dad taught me something. What? I looked toward the horizon. The same fields where he taught me to repair fences. The same land everyone called worthless. The same land now worth millions. He taught me that people eventually reveal themselves. Mom wiped her eyes, and I continued. If someone constantly needs recognition, they'll reveal it. She nodded slowly. If someone constantly needs attention, they'll reveal it. Another nod. If someone constantly needs to feel superior... I didn't finish. I didn't need to. Mom understood. The silence lasted a long time. Then she whispered, I'm sorry. 3 words, 30 years late, but sincere, and sincerity matters. For a moment, I felt something unexpected. Not victory, not satisfaction, sadness, because none of this had to happen. Not the fraud, not the investigation, not the public humiliation. Ashley could have called me. She could have asked. She could have told the truth. Instead, she trusted her ego. And ego is a terrible advisor, especially when millions of dollars are involved. A week later, the consequences reached another level, and Ashley finally realized there was no escape route left. By the 4th month, Ashley stopped trying to explain herself. That was the first sign reality had finally caught up with her. For weeks, she had fought everything. The investigators, the attorneys, the brokerage, the media, the family, even basic facts. Every conversation followed the same pattern. Someone presented evidence. Ashley offered excuses. Someone presented more evidence. Ashley blamed someone else. But eventually, the evidence became too overwhelming. The forged documents, the altered records, the email trail, the consultant she originally claimed not to remember. Investigators found everything, and once they found him, the rest came apart quickly. The consultant wasn't some sophisticated criminal mastermind. He was exactly the kind of person you'd expect. A failed land broker with a history of questionable deals, he had discovered rumors about mineral exploration in the area. Not the full lithium survey, not the actual value, just enough information to suspect the land was worth significantly more than people believed. He approached Ashley because he knew her reputation. He knew she was ambitious. He knew she liked fast opportunities. Most importantly, he knew she believed she was smarter than everyone else. Together, they convinced themselves they could move the property before anyone noticed. Maybe they expected a quick profit. Maybe they planned to negotiate later. Maybe they never thought anyone would look closely. Whatever their plan was, it collapsed under scrutiny. One afternoon, David called me with an update. A plea agreement is being discussed. I sat back in my chair. Outside my office window, farmers were harvesting soybeans. Life continuing as normal. Meanwhile, Ashley's life was being dismantled piece by piece. What does that mean? It means prosecutors believe they can prove intent. I closed my eyes. Intent. That word mattered. Mistakes can be forgiven. Intentional deception carries different consequences. David continued. She'll avoid prison if she cooperates. I felt no satisfaction hearing that. Only disappointment, because prison wasn't the point. The point was accountability. And accountability had finally arrived. A month later, Ashley accepted the agreement. Her real estate license was permanently revoked. Not suspended, not temporarily restricted. Gone. Forever. The career she spent more than a decade building disappeared with a single signature. Then came the financial consequences. Legal fees, restitution, civil settlements, professional penalties. Everything added up quickly, very quickly. The luxury SUV disappeared first, then the vacation property, then several investment accounts. Finally, the large house she loved showing off at family gatherings. The house sold 3 months later. I drove past it once after new owners moved in. The landscaping looked different. The decorations were gone. No sign remained that Ashley had ever lived there. I remember thinking how strange that was. For years, she measured success through things people could see. Cars, jewelry, awards, square footage, neighborhoods. Now all of it belonged to someone else. And she was forced to confront a question she had avoided her entire life. Who are you when the image disappears? That question broke her, at least initially. Mom told me Ashley barely left her apartment for months. She stopped attending social events, stopped posting online, stopped pretending. People who once praised her suddenly forgot her name. People who once begged for invitations stopped calling. The country club membership quietly disappeared. The professional organizations removed her from leadership roles. The magazine profiles stopped mattering. Everything built on appearance vanished with astonishing speed. And for the first time in her life, Ashley experienced something unfamiliar. Silence. No applause, no admiration, no audience. Just consequences. One evening, Mom called. "Ashley wants to see you." I stared at my phone. The request surprised me. Months earlier, she had blamed everyone except herself. Now, she wanted a meeting. "Why?" Mom hesitated. "She says she owes you something." "What?" Another pause. "The truth." For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then I agreed. Not because I expected anything meaningful, because I was curious. A week later, I met Ashley at a small coffee shop on the edge of town. The moment she walked in, I barely recognized her. Not physically, emotionally, the arrogance was gone. The certainty was gone. The constant performance was gone. For the first time in decades, she looked like a real person, not a character, not a brand, a person. We sat across from each other, neither speaking for nearly a minute. Then Ashley finally broke the silence. "I hated you." The honesty surprised me, not because I didn't know, because she admitted it. "I know." She nodded. "I hated how Dad looked at you." I listened. "He trusted you." Her voice trembled. "I thought trust was something you earned by succeeding." I remembered Dad's letter, the farm, the inheritance, everything, Ashley continued. "But he trusted you because you were honest." She laughed sadly, and I didn't understand the difference. For the next hour, we talked more honestly than we had in 20 years. No excuses, no manipulation, no performance, just truth. And sometimes truth arrives only after everything else has been stripped away. When we left the coffee shop, nothing was magically fixed. We weren't suddenly close. We didn't become best friends. Life doesn't work that way. But something important changed. For the first time, Ashley stopped lying to herself. And that was the beginning of her recovery. 2 years passed. A lot can happen in 2 years, and a lot did. The lithium deal eventually closed, not for $34 million, for $41.8 million. The increase surprised even me. Market demand exploded. Additional testing confirmed larger reserves. Competition between buyers pushed the value higher. By every financial measure, it was a life-changing outcome. But strangely, the money wasn't what changed my life. The peace did. For years, I carried the weight of being misunderstood. The disappointing son, the unsuccessful brother, the family member nobody took seriously. Eventually, I realized something. You can spend your entire life trying to correct other people's opinions. Or you can spend that time building something valuable. One approach creates arguments. The other creates results. I chose results. The farm remained mine. Most of the land remained untouched. I invested heavily into conservation programs, agricultural education initiatives, community development projects. Several local scholarships were funded anonymously. Dad would have liked that. He always believed wealth carried responsibility, not just privilege. One October afternoon, my phone rang. Ashley. I hadn't spoken to her in months, not because of conflict. Life simply moved on. I answered. "Hey." "Hey." Her voice sounded different than it used to. Calmer, lighter, healthier. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." She hesitated, then laughed softly. "Do you remember the day I called about selling the farm?" I smiled. Hard to forget. "Fair." A few seconds passed. Then she said something I never expected to hear. "I spent most of my life believing success was what people could see." I remained silent. She continued. "Houses, cars, awards, titles." The old Ashley would have stopped there. This Ashley didn't. I never noticed you were building something real." The words landed harder than she realized, because that was the first time anyone in my family had truly understood not the money, not the lithium, not the inheritance, the work, the patience, the discipline. The years spent building something nobody applauded. Ashley took a deep breath. "I wanted you to know that." Then she added, "And I'm sorry." Not because she had to, not because a lawyer recommended it, not because she wanted something, because she meant it. For the first time in our lives, I believed her completely. Today, when people hear this story, they usually focus on the money. $41.8 million, the lithium deposit, the failed land sale, the investigation, the fraud, the headlines. But those aren't the parts I remember most. What I remember is sitting at family dinners while people laughed at choices they didn't understand. I remember being treated like the failure because my success didn't look impressive enough. I remember watching people confuse visibility with value. And I remember learning something my father tried to teach me years ago while repairing a fence under a blazing August sun. Most people only see what's on the surface. Very few look underneath. The same lesson applied to the farm. Everyone saw old buildings, worn-out fences, empty fields. Nobody saw what was buried below. And the same lesson applied to people. Everyone saw Ashley's trophies, her awards, her reputation. Nobody saw the insecurity underneath. Everyone saw my old truck, my boots, my quiet life. Nobody saw what I was building. That's the danger of assumptions. They blind people to reality. Ashley eventually rebuilt her life, not the same life, a different one, a better one in some ways, less impressive from the outside, more honest on the inside. And maybe that was the real victory, not the money, not the deal, not even the justice. The growth, because accountability without growth is just punishment. But accountability with growth becomes wisdom. As for me, I still keep Dad's letter. The paper is older now, the edges are worn, but one sentence still stands out every time I read it. "You're the only person who ever loved the land more than what it could be sold for." Back then, I thought he was talking about a farm. Now I know he was talking about character, because the people who underestimate you today are usually judging a version of you that exists only in their imagination. And sooner or later, reality sends them the bill.